Today's video is about contempt. So in my previous videos, I've been talking about common negative behaviors within relationships that can really harm your marriage, your relationship, can really cause a lot of dissatisfaction. So today is about contempt. So what is contempt, and what does it look like? How does it show up? And how can you reverse it or stop it or prevent it from coming? So contempt is more like a state of mind, right? It's built up over time through negative interactions, whether small or big. So even regular, frequent, small negative interactions, over time these accumulate, and a person can be in a state of contempt to the other person. So they become contemptuous, right? They show resentment. They show that there is no good in that partner or in that person. A person in a state of contempt goes into a state of what we call negative sentiment override. So when there's contempt in the marriage and negative sentiment override is activated, anything the spouse says or does is, it's expected to be, the worst, or it's translated or interpreted to be negative. Always expecting negativity from them or looking at things in the worst case scenario. This is what we call negative sentiment override. So even if the partner's saying something neutral or something good, it's thought of, in a negative way, like, I wonder what he or she is up to with this statement, and yeah, so things are just interpreted in the worst possible way. When couples are in this state, there's a lot of passive aggressiveness showing up. There's a lot of trying to explain. I meant this, I meant that. That's not what I meant. You understood me wrong, and then it's just, this is a sign of negative sentiment override and contempt. So it's a gradual compilation of negative interactions. And when we say negative, we don't mean just major, major incidents. We mean even like just criticizing or just turning away from your spouse when they need you, or being defensive, or that little, that little mockery that you made, or that little comment that hurt their feelings. It's those small interactions, not by themselves, not isolated, but built up over time. Okay, so this is contempt. It shows up in talking from a place of moral high ground, moral superiority. So looking down at your spouse, really trashing your spouse when you speak to them, talking to them not like a spouse or like a friend, but talking to them like a dictator, like a leader, and that you are up here, they are down there, and then you talk to them downways like this, and then when they talk to you, you expect them to talk to you this way, and you just might think, yeah, whatever, I already know everything, you know what I mean? You don't have to talk to me type of approach. So moral superiority is one way that it shows up. Disrespect is another way that it shows up. So through, really putting your spouse down, using foul language, verbal abuse, name calling, mockery, mocking your partner, and laughing about it, and then, maybe just saying, oh, I was just joking, So mocking their personality, their appearance, their choices, things that they've did, I told you not to do that, and stuff like this. Sarcasm as well, hostile humor. These are all very dangerous. A lot of people do this. These are all signs that there's contempt. If there's regular hostile humor, regular mockery, and sarcasm, and cynicism as well. Always, as I said, assuming the worst and translating things to be negative. Name calling, even eye rolling is a sign. When your partner's talking, you're like, oh, here we go again. You're thinking, here we go again. Here they go again. So you're rolling your eyes backwards regularly when your partner's talking to you, sneering. These are all very destructive behaviors that indicate that the marriage is in a very bad state. Contempt is actually a sign of divorce. People don't divorce before there's contempt, most of the time, if not all the time. So people don't just sort of say, you know what, life's good, you're good, I'm good, everything is good, but let's divorce. You are divorced. That doesn't happen. Contempt is the prerequisite of divorce, okay? And negative interactions is the prerequisite of contempt. So you can see how dangerous this is. Usually there's a buildup of years. Research shows about 6 years. This is where people start to, if there's been 6 years of contempt, this is where people start to throw in the towel and call it quits, or start thinking about divorce, or start talking about divorce. Okay, so this is how contempt looks like, right? And it's built up through those small interactions, and it's that interaction by itself doesn't define the relationship, doesn't ruin the relationship, but when it's constant and frequent, this is where a person or a relationship can go into a state of contempt. What we need to understand about contempt as well is that when we are hurt, or when we've been disrespected or abused or put down, mocked and so forth, we think that the ratio is 1-to-1. So, okay, that was a bad interaction, here's a good interaction, and we're sweet. No, that's not the case. Due to the way we are, the way we are wired as humans, we remember the hurt and the pain way longer than we remember a good interaction. So when we're hurt, we're bullied or whatever, this lasts for a very long time, if not forever. Okay, so it's not, the ratio is not just 1-to-1. The research shows and suggests that the ratio is 5-to-1. 5-to-1. So it takes 5 positive interactions to balance out a negative interaction. Okay, so if you're making 5 positives to 1 negative, then you're doing okay. Okay, but if you're doing 1-to-1, you're not doing okay. You're still in contempt, right? So you got to imagine like you have an emotional bank account, and each interaction you do is either a withdrawal or a deposit. So every time there's all the other stuff that I mentioned, you're making withdrawals, and it doesn't just take 1 deposit to make that back up. It takes 5 positive deposits. So imagine being in a marriage 5, 6, 10, 12, 15 years, and there was criticism and defensiveness and contempt and disrespect and moral superiority and all this negativity, far more, right, than there is those nice moments or those neutral moments. Okay, imagine a relationship like that where you're making withdrawals from this emotional bank account every day, withdrawing. You're not just on zero, you're below, you're in the minus, and this is contempt. This is resentment, right? You can't, it's really hard for you to think of the good memories. It's really difficult for you to think of your partner's positive qualities. So that's what contempt looks like. It is a predictor of divorce, and it's very dangerous. If it's in your relationship, I'm not trying to scare you, but you need to start doing something about it. Understanding this ratio can really help you self-reflect and ask yourself, am I making deposits into my emotional bank account, or am I withdrawing? To simplify it all for you, the antidote to contempt, is the opposite of contempt. It's to really build a culture of appreciation and respect. This is what it is. So it's in those small moments, right, where you see your spouse doing something, saying something, and even if they're not doing anything really, they're just sitting there and you want to conversate, it's making sure that you're showing appreciation, that the fact that they are there. Okay, showing them respect when you talk to them, even if you disagree. Showing them respect, showing them that respect for who they are and for what they do in the relationship. The opposite of that is not being, coming across as you're never good enough, you're not good enough, I don't care what you do, it's never good enough, So some ways that you can do this is by looking at, your spouse as a whole. So how they are as a spouse, how they are as a mother or a father, how they are as a friend, as a neighbor, as a person in society, and so forth. And you can just sort of say, I'll give you an example that I like to give. This is an example based not on what the spouse did in the relationship, but just who they are as a person. So let's say your spouse's friend's family member passed away, and your spouse was there for them. They were attending every day. They were being there. They were comforting. They were helping. They were serving. And you sort of you've seen that. So instead of saying, "Oh, you're always at your friend's house and you never spend time with me," becoming jealous and and sucking like a child, it's to say, it's basically to say, I've seen how supportive you were to your friend, and how helpful you were during their time of mourning and grieving and distress. That's very caring of you, and I really appreciate that about you. I really like that about you. That is a deposit in the emotional bank account, and that, similar to this, builds respect and a culture of appreciation. So when husband and wife are doing this regularly, they're building that culture of appreciation, and that works as a buffer. See, when your emotional bank account now is in the plus, it's not in the minus anymore. Those deposits work as a buffer between you and contempt and divorce. And if you do have negative moments, you have enough deposits in that bank to make withdrawals. It's not putting you in the zero. There's a lot of positivity there, positive interactions, that you can make some withdrawals, and it's fine. It's not going to ruin your relationship. But when you're in the minus, even the smallest thing can really feel like a mountain, like the worst thing ever. So the antidote to contempt, all right, just like contempt is built up over time, the antidote also needs to be a state of mind. It's more of an attitude, right? And that needs to be built up also over time. And that's to build a culture of appreciation and respect. I hope you found my video to be helpful. Please comment or ask any questions that you may like. In the next video, I'll be talking a little bit more about conflict management skills and how to practically apply them in your life.